right. Thank you very much, Lizzie. Now I want to turn to a special guest, Ohio Senator Rob Portman, who is a super committee member and a former White House budget director. He joins us from Washington right now. Senator, welcome to the show. You've helped prepare GOP presidential nominees for debates like this. What do these candidates need to be wary of tonight?
Well, I think the candidates need to be sure that they're getting their message across. And sometimes answering the question is important, but also being sure you lay out your vision. So this is about the economy, which is the top issue that voters are looking for. So as candidates get questions tonight, what I'm going to be watching for is, what's their worldview? What's their vision? And then, answering the question as well. But they got to be sure and get their message out.
Right. Well, you're an expert on the budget. You're on this super committee. Have you heard enough specificity from the candidates at this point?
Well, I'm really pleased by the fact that there is a lot of discussion about the economy and about the deficit and the debt and the importance of addressing it and tying the two together because they are related. I like Mitt Romney's plan that's very specific, and he's got more pages of policy out there than anybody else right now. But also Herman Cain's been talking about the economy. Obviously, his 999 plan has to do with how to move the economy forward. So I'm encouraged that on the Republican side, among our candidates, people are talking about the real issues. And they're talking about structural reforms, not just the short-term approaches that the president is talking about. A lot of what the president is saying is, let's pump a little more money in here, let's do a short-term tax cut here. Whereas these candidates are talking about the need to fundamentally restructure our tax system, our health care system, our regulatory system, our energy system, so that we can move America forward and be more competitive. And I'm very pleased with that debate.
Well, we've heard a lot from the candidates as to maybe what they would change in terms of tax policy, not a lot in terms of what they would cut. And we haven't heard much from the president himself as late as to the efforts of your committee, the super committee. You've got to find $1.5 trillion to cut. Is the momentum still there?
The momentum has to be there, Margaret. We have to succeed. And by the way, the challenge is much bigger than that. If you look what's likely to happen over the next 10 years, we may add anywhere from $5 to $10 trillion in additional debt. So these candidates, one of whom I believe will be President of the United States, we'll see, do need to lay out a vision for the economy that includes dealing with the deficit and debt, because that huge overhang of deficit and debt makes it very difficult for us to have the kind of recovery we all hope for.
Well, that debt and the political gridlock that happened in Washington is why S&P downgraded this country's credit rating. How do you describe partisan relationships right now? Has it improved?
Well, again, I'm hopeful that this committee can be successful, but also that Congress as a whole can be successful. Some of the items that these candidates will talk about tonight, I would take regulatory reform and tax reform as an example. I have bipartisan support, and there's no reason even during the next 13 months, which is going to be, a presidential campaign period, that we can't get together and do some fundamental things in those areas. Provide regulatory relief to small businesses that are needing it right now to be able to lower their cost of doing business, to be able to take our tax code and make it more pro-growth and pro-jobs, lower the rates, broadening the base. These are all things that we should be able to do on a bipartisan basis. Tomorrow we're going to have a vote on one of the issues that needs to be addressed, which is how do you expand exports, because exports equals jobs. There are 3 trade agreements the president has finally sent to Congress after sitting on them for the last few years. Those will create jobs, and by the president's own metrics, about 250,000 new jobs. We need to move forward and do a lot more there. We haven't been negotiating trade agreements during this administration on a bilateral basis because he hasn't had the authority or wanted the authority to do it. So this is an area where these candidates will talk about it tonight, I hope. We need to be much more aggressive in international markets and sell more of our products, so our farmers, our workers.
You've been pretty aggressive this evening in how you voted, particularly as it relates to China. Tonight you voted for a bill that's going to let companies seek duties basically based on currency valuation, slap at China, which has warned that you could result in a trade war from backing something like this. Do you think that John Huntsman or Mitt Romney has a more constructive view towards China right now? Your former trade representative.
Well, look, as a former trade representative who negotiated a lot with very tough Chinese negotiators, I think the Chinese negotiators know exactly what needs to be done. We do need to have their currency appreciate, because that's what's fair. We also need to deal with intellectual property and subsidies and so-called indigenous innovation. It needs to be a fair trading relationship. We're both now mature trading partners. We should trade on the basis of mutual respect, and that includes addressing these issues. So I don't fear that there will be a trade war. I do fear that if we don't stand up and be sure that we have a trade relationship of mutual respect, that we'll continue to see erosion in this country for support of trade. Again, these free trade agreements that are coming forward tomorrow to be voted on in the House and the Senate are examples of what we ought to be doing a lot more of. I believe in trade agreements because I believe in opening up markets, but I also believe that we need to have fairness and a level playing field between countries. With that, you know, the entire global economy will benefit. So I hope I'll hear some about that tonight. I'm sure I will from all the candidates.
I don't think you said Romney or Huntsman, though.
Well, you know, they both have a lot of experience. I think it's interesting when you look at the candidates that are doing well right now that they both have good private sector experience, and Governor Huntsman does as well, particularly being ambassador there. So I think that's also something that's positive on the Republican side this year. We're going to have candidates out there who can speak about the need for us to move forward on policy, but also based on a private sector background and experience.
All right. Going back to your diplomatic roots there, Senator, thanks for making time. When we come back
Thanks, Margaret.
from this
Take
quick
care.
break, we're going to take you to the main streets of the candidates' hometowns.